We are live. My name is Jamie Irvin. I'm the host of the Heavy Duty Parts Report. This is another episode of HDPR Live. And today we have Scott Boltz, Vice President at Global Emissions Systems. And he is joining us once again. Scott, welcome back to HDPR Live.
Hey, Jamie, how you doing, man? It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's really great to have you on. I love the kind of conversations that we are able to have because I think that we're able to focus in on industry topics and really share some good information. Today, we're going to talk about how the pandemic has affected working in the trucking industry. We're halfway through the fourth quarter of 2020, and we've all been dealing with this since back in March. And really, the pandemic has had a significant impact on our personal lives, on our professional lives. Some people, though, have been able to, they shut down when the lockdown happened in the spring, and they really haven't gotten back to traveling like we used to. Other people have had to continue to travel, and that's what we want to talk about today. So, Scott, you're someone who has continued to travel after the lockdown restrictions were eased, and I'd really like to talk to you about what that's been like. How has that felt for you?
It's been very interesting. Just a little background. I was working for a company called Tecumseh Products Company, and I was furloughed at the beginning of the pandemic. And they had furloughed about 30% of the workforce, including sales as well as production and many other things. And so when I came aboard at Global Emissions, our mission really is to launch a new brand in the United States and Canada. And in order to do that, you really have to be out in front of the people, right? And so there's a huge challenge that, going back into April when no one was traveling, it just became a thing, right? That I have to get out there. And so, we went out and we hired a multinational sales team of over about 30 people. And in order to get those people up to speed and to get them confident enough to do their own jobs on our behalf, it was necessary for me to start getting on planes again. And so, excuse me. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to share my screen. I'll show you a couple pictures from back in early May.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was just asking the audience here with a comment if they're traveling or working virtually. It'd be interesting to see. Let's see. We're going to share screen now. So new tech, everyone. We're just figuring things out. Here we go. You should be able to see Scott's screen. So what are you about to show us, Scott?
Just a couple images in a video that I took when I started flying back out and working in the field again. And so can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it. Go ahead.
Okay, so on the left, that's Tampa Airport. And that space is where you get on the tram to go to the air side. And it was a ghost town. It was really, really strange. Now, I can tell you as a frequent flyer that it's kind of nice, having that space and freedom and lack of delay and lines and everything else. But it was also very eerie. On the right side, a lot of people might recognize this shot. This is the moving walkway between, I think it's airsides A and T in Atlanta. And if you're a Delta flyer, then you know this tram very well.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been there.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just so. I was texting. I have a lot of friends that I work that work like I do, and so I was texting them images of this. And then on one trip, I arrived into Kansas City, and this video tells a lot. And so as it rounds a corner, try to count the planes, and then when you round the next corner at the end of the video, watch how far it goes. It's really, really eerie, strange.
And these aren't just parked planes, right? You mentioned that there's something about them that's a little different.
Yeah, they're buttoned up. Look at the windshields. Look at the engines. Look at the tires. I mean, everything is buckled down and buttoned up.
Wow.
And it just goes and goes. I mean,
look at that. Ernie Barella on LinkedIn says that he's been working from home, his home office in California since March. So he's somebody who's had to work virtually.
Right.
Look at that. Look at all of those planes buttoned up. That's something that's probably like once in a lifetime we'll see.
Correct. And so when I was coming around the corner and I saw it, I'm like, I got to get a video of this again to share with my cohort of fellow traveling, sales managers.
And since no one was around, you didn't have to worry about distracted driving.
Well, no, I was looking forward. I was holding my phone out the window, but
yeah, no, just teasing.
Watch the bend. Watch the bend. Here it comes.
Oh my goodness! Look at that.
Yeah, it just keeps going, right? And so,
wow, that is something else.
So if you want to talk about what it's like,
Yeah,
Today,
what does it feel like? So you're walking through there, it's kind of a ghost town. I'm sure the first time it was a bit of shock. What does it
it
feel
was.
like to be able to do that? What are you contending with? What are you thinking about while you're traveling?
Well, that's kind of the funny thing. I contend that we guys that do what we do and travel like we travel are a risk vector for illness to our families and to our communities before all this started, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I would, like, once every other year I would get a really, really, really bad flu, get through it, and then get back on the road again. And now, if you have a slight cough, or if you even, you know, persist a symptom that doesn't, it's not related to anything else, now you're a pariah in a lot of ways. And so it's very strange in that regard. But I will say this, now I fly Delta, so this is strictly Delta. I can't speak to the other airlines, but those flights, as they define full, which is eliminating the middle seats on both sides, are full every time I fly. So there is a recovery, and there is kind of a mechanism of everybody kind of a social contract in a way that will mask up unless I'm eating or having a drink or whatever. But you do all those kind of things, and social distancing is kind of a thing, but kind of not as far as what I've seen. But in many ways, it's back to a degree that it seems almost like it did before, minus the middle seat kind of thing and all the other precautions that are put in place.
Right. So is that extending travel time? Is it taking a little longer to
No,
get faster?
it's faster.
Right. Right. So we got Glenn Borthwick, who commented on LinkedIn that they're developing virtual events to maintain their representatives' engagement and people engaging with their products. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about, since you've continued to travel post the lockdown, what opportunities have come up? So travel's a little easier because there's less people, but what other opportunities have you seen?
Well, you have to also understand that my mission is to launch a new brand, right? And so there's a lot of B2B, a lot of person to person, going about. And I firmly believe that as good as AI has become, and as good as our ability to interact over video and Zoom and Skype and things like that, there is really nothing, in my opinion, that replaces that one-to-one interaction. So the real challenge becomes, can you get in to see someone? You can see them, but I've done tailgate meetings outside of distributors, right? Like, we'll go sit on the tailgate and talk for a while. But also a challenge too, a lot of what we do is social and meal driven, breakfast, lunch, and dinner kind of stuff. And finding restaurants has in certain cities been a challenge. In many other cities, especially in the Midwest in the United States, has been very easy. So a lot of it's moving out of the typical manager behind the desk, 2 chairs on the other side of the monitor, kind of sitting and having meetings and handing catalogs and talking about features and benefits, value propositions, and things like that. It's become a lot more personal, which I find much more engaging, by the way. And so there's ups and downs on both sides. There's trade-offs. And so at the same time, my level of Zoom interaction with my sales team and with my customers has gone up exponentially.
I think that's kind of the situation for a lot of people. Like, I've been using Zoom for a long time.
Me too.
I was using it for my interviews. I was using it for business long before Zoom was a household name. Jose on LinkedIn says that he's heard that AutoCorp office personnel are going to remain working from home until at least April 2021. So you see where a lot of companies' headspaces are. Personally, for me, I've used the virtual tools very effectively. I've launched a podcast that's been successful. I've launched a consulting business now. 2020's business has been very strong, and we're already under contract for 2021, where we look like we're going to see 50% growth. I have to say, as a real social person, I miss the trade shows. I miss the in-person interaction, like you say, driven around meals, the social aspect of it. It's not that you can't grow a business virtually, but there is something missing without that in-person kind of interaction, for sure.
Agreed. And I think you would agree with the statement that our industry is very small, and the network, once you elevate into the network, you make friendships, and they transcend companies, right? I have myself included, but many friends who, excuse me, have worked for other companies, right? So it's not corporately driven. It's the network of people. And when we get the chance to be together, it's like a family reunion in some ways. And those are great times. And I think there's a pent up demand for those trade shows. And I think there's a pent up demand for the ability for the established organizations like TMC and other things to get back together, because the core of those entities were about personal relationships.
Absolutely. Now, we kind of want to look at this from the perspective of the executives. So if the executives are kind of wrestling with how to balance do we send people into the field? What precautions do we have to take? Do we only do virtual? If we're going to do a blend of both, I'd like you to talk a little bit more about how that thing that you said a few minutes ago about being a risk factor to your community. You're a very active member of your community, not just in your family, but in other organizations.
Yes.
How has that been for you?
Well, again, we want to steer away from the politics of what's going on, but as a foundational element, myself, I have been traveling for my work for a very long time. And so it was common, to get the airplane immunity. You have to earn that, right? It comes with time and exposure and experience. You mentioned, outside of work, I'm very active in the Boy Scouts. I've been a leader for over a decade. And so we're around teenage, boys that are, have no ability to social distance, right? They like hive up on themselves when they get back together, especially if they've been held apart for a long period of time, right? So yeah, it's a risk assessment, and I have no advice for any executive. It's a personal call, right? You have to weigh and measure and evaluate and assess the risk. And my personal assessment is a bit different, but there's indemnification that comes too. Like when we're together with groups, I'm talking about outside of work, we all sign forms, right? That we've all been healthy over the last 2 weeks and there's no signs or symptoms, and that we accept the risk that you may get sick, right? So there's this weird new legal aspect to social gatherings, which is, I hope goes away soon, because it's really, I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah. But it takes something away from it for sure. Right?
It does.
I mean, like in the past, we'd go up to people in a social situation, we give them a hug, and now at best we're throwing out an elbow and getting them to sign a form. Like it's a dramatic change.
Right. But for my customers that I've gone and visited with that have already caught the whatever COVID or whatever you want to call it, and they've gotten better, like we're bro hugging all the time, and we're all like, oh, we're all good, So it's funny. From a corporate perspective and from a leadership perspective, when I'm addressing my sales team, it's on them. It's up to them to decide how best to make sure that they're safe and their families are safe. And I have some sales managers who have risk relatives, whatever term you want to use for them, that are at a higher risk, and some that don't. And so I can also tell you that from like April was a dead month for our economy, right? Like everybody just kind of sheltered in place. And once things started to open back up in May, it wasn't like it just turned back on. It kind of had to slowly kind of curve back into the thing. But now, you can't run a business that relies upon the sale and the value proposition of moving products from manufacturing into the fleets and not be on the road. It's just how you do it.
Yeah. And, it's interesting. Like Vanessa just commented here that their specialized heavy haul transportation company is still active. They're still meeting with people. They're servicing daily. So, everybody has to make their own decisions, and there's consequences with those decisions. I know for myself, I'll talk personally. I love to play hockey. I'm Canadian, go figure. And, they did start up the league, and I live in a small town, but just to show you how Canadian it is, we have 22 hockey teams in the adult beer league. Nice. And there's only 8,500 people in our town. So it's like 1/3 of the male population is playing hockey in this town. And, what they did is they did cohorts where you played the same like 3 teams for a month, and then you have to take 2 weeks off, make sure you don't have any symptoms. And so it's a social contract, right? You're trusting people that they're going to be responsible. And then you have like a good friend of mine who said, I can't play. I've got a grandfather who is at risk, and it's a risk I'm not willing to take. And so, there you go. Right now in business, it's tough because you have to make a living. And if you can find ways to leverage the virtual technology and still grow your business like we've done over here, then that's great. But not everybody can achieve that, or at least if they can achieve some success, they won't be able to achieve their full amount of success that they would under normal circumstances.
Ideally. So I respect your hockey lineage. I'm sure you've heard of a city called Tampa Bay.
Oh yeah. There you go. There you go. Yeah, you guys got yours.
We did. Unfortunately, the Rays didn't win the series, but that would have been sweet if we could have got the Lightning and the Rays. That would have been awesome.
Yeah, that's just wonderful for you. I'm a Vancouver Canucks fan, and we've been to the finals 3 times, and I've never been able to see them hoist a cup.
Yeah, but wasn't the Stanley Cup in Edmonton?
Yeah, it was just like 2 hours from where I live. So yeah. This is interesting. Ernie comments again. He says he 100% agrees with the personal risk assessment point. It seems like most customers fully understand that and appreciate that. How have your customers reacted to you being willing to travel and come see them in person?
I have been blown away. I expected much more pushback. And again, it depends on where you are in the country. The West Coast is different than the East Coast, is different than the Midwest, is different than the Southwest, is different than the Southeast. And so there's certain parts of the country that there's no masks. There's handshaking, and it's business as usual in many ways. And in other parts of the country, we all, do our best to mask up, and we social distance in the room, and everybody's got their space. And so that's been interesting. And then there's a certain cohort of customers that won't see you. And what I find is that how corporate the customer is, in other words, how large the corporation is, determines their legality. And then therefore how they approach the ability to see their own customers as well as salespeople.
Yeah, I've experienced that too. Like we had an 1.5-hour meeting last week with a large corporation and did a full presentation. There was, must have been, I don't know, 6 or more people on the call just from their company alone. Everybody's masked up. Everybody's until they, unless they're in their own office, and then they can take the mask off. It's a definitely, and I mean, you have to understand that, right? If you have hundreds of locations and you're responsible for thousands of people, your burden of responsibility is just a little higher.
It is.
Yeah. Hey, Ernie says the Dodgers know them well, so there you go.
We got close. We got really close.
Yeah. This is interesting. So Vanessa says, in addition, I do keep in compliance with the proper PPE and the regulations with all of the locations of their transportation business. So of course, people who do have the ability to say, no, we're going to remain open, we're going to interact with the public, they have that responsibility. And like Vanessa, they have to be pretty proactive to make sure that they are following those regulations and making sure people are safe.
Jamie, think of the drivers.
Yeah.
How do you contain a driver? I mean, he's, similar to me, a huge vector potential. And, you're over many different states, over many different miles, over many different situations where you have to fuel up and you have to hit the showers and all the things that the drivers do in their daily lives and interact amongst each other. I mean, it's a challenge. But at the same time, I think there's a distinct, at least in the US, an American mindset that is, damn the torpedoes in some ways. Like, we have to get this done and we're going to go do it. And those are the people that are really keeping the wheels turning.
So I know my opinion on this, but I'd like to hear from you first. What's the future look like? Are we going to go back? Are we going to stay in the virtual space, or is there going to be a hybrid? What do you think is going to happen going forward in the heavy duty parts industry?
Well, Jamie, in one of our previous conversations, we talked about the fourth turning, and I think that comes into play in that question. So do we go back? No, we roll forward, but in that oscillation, right? And so, we like to sometimes be hyperbolic in the sense of how we quantify time. And the stuff that you did for a living or do for a living and the stuff that I do for a living, we're very much integrated with technology before this whole thing happened. And again, like you said, I've had a professional Zoom account for many years, and so have you, right? And so, we use technology to our advantage, but at the same time, I don't think it ultimately turns into we all are in our little foxholes and are afraid to come out and do the things that we need to do to support our companies that we work for and to support the industry.
Yeah, yeah. I'm listening. I'm trying to find the link for that conversation we had going back to the fourth turning, because some people watching today might not know. So I'm going to just paste the link for that into the comment bar right now. And for a minute there, things did kind of freeze up on my end anyway, so I'm not sure if that happened for you, but I've posted the comment, the link to our discussion about the future of heavy duty parts in the fourth turning. I like that concept that we're moving forward and we're going to adapt. I think that's really what we have to do. Personally, I see a blend of getting back on the road, getting back to trade shows at some point, but then now people's comfort level with virtual tools is going to allow us to be able to say, you know what, not every time do we have to make that in-person trip. Sometimes there's things we can do virtually. Right. We've been able to be successful at that. So I actually think in the long run, this is probably moving the heavy duty parts industry forward a little bit. You know, sometimes we're kind of known as a late adopting industry when it comes to technology adoption. This forced us to adopt that technology. I think that's a good thing.
It is. It is. And I think we're just going to become more efficient. But I don't think we eliminate either side of that equation.
I agree. You don't see an elimination. No way. It's got to be a hybrid blend. So, you know what? We've had a good conversation about the realities of this. We've had some great interaction with people watching and commenting. I'd like to kind of end the conversation on maybe one final thought. So how would you like to take us home there, Scott?
Well, as you know, there's an election going on. And that always has economic implications. It's funny, every 4 years in the US, we get this whole like weird behavior in the economy. I'm looking forward to, regardless of the outcome, getting back to some degree of normalcy is not the right word, but whatever the future is, right? Whatever we make the new normal to be, I'm looking forward to being a part of that and getting our industry, again, back into a place to where we can benefit the lives of other people and you know, produce good outcomes for every step of the whole chain in what we do.
Well, I definitely second that. Scott, thank you so much for being back on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Jamie. Thank you, man. Good seeing you.
Good seeing you too. So I'm your host, Jamie Irvin of the Heavy Duty Parts Report. Go over to heavydutypartsreport.com and make sure you subscribe to our weekly email where you can keep up to date with all of our content. Thank you so much for watching another edition of HDPR Live, coming at you every Thursday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. So make a note. We'll be back on next week. Thank you so much for everyone for commenting and being a part of our show today, and we will talk to you soon.